Hi everyone, I'm Kavya and today I have Utsav Tiwari here with me. Utsav has seen like multiple sides of the engineering journey, building large scale systems, founding a startup and now leading engineering teams. And I'm hoping that we can like actually unpack what that journey looks like. So thank you so much for joining Utsav.
You so much. This is really fun. I don't think I've done too many podcasts in my life, and this one is definitely special. So, all the best to you for starting off on this.
Yeah. Thank you so much actually. So I think maybe like a good place to get started is that like looking back so far, were there any moments that like
hmm
really changed the direction of your journey, like your career journey? Like, do you want to talk about that?
The pivotal moments, there would be quite a few. I don't think I would want to narrow down on one or two specific ones. Small decisions sometimes go a very long way. They have a good, solid butterfly effect, so to say. Being exposed to the Indian startup ecosystem early in my career was definitely interesting. I started off with housing.com, which at that point in time was one of the hottest VC backed startups in the country, making a lot of noises in the ecosystem, sometimes for not the best reasons. On my first day was the first day itself in that journey was super interesting because the day before the CEO had been booted out of the company. So that was an interesting start to the career. That was one pivotal moment for sure. At least it gave a pretty good, not just a ringside view, but of course almost a front row seat into how startups operate. What does VC funding? How does it change the trajectory of a company? What does it take to build a startup, etc., etc. And other pivotal moments, starting off with my own company in 2020 was definitely a pivotal moment because it shifts your perspective from being a part of a larger machinery to owning that machinery and making sure it runs, making sure it's financially stable. You're able to pay the bills, yet build something meaningful for the customers, etc., etc. You have to don many hats. So it was a huge change in uh, career trajectory, so to say. Not in terms of direction. I mean, I did not end up becoming a farmer after that, but at least gave a very holistic picture of where does the software that people build fit in. It's not the center of the universe. When you are a programmer, you feel that code is at the center of the world and everything is around it. Sure, it's the most critical piece of a tech company, but a lot more goes into making that software useful, getting it into the hands of the users, getting feedback, and then eventually generating value is a huge deal. It's extremely hard, and that also made me appreciate how a lot of companies which have scaled to a significantly larger revenue or scale in terms of headcount, in terms of number of customers, etc., how they did it over years. It requires a lot of patience, consistency, etc. So that was definitely a pivotal moment. And of course, then working for different companies at different stages have always been very pivotal in their own way. And then going from not just being a developer to an engineering manager or a CTO, etc. Of course, CTO, it's a title more than anything else. All of them were pretty pivotal.
All right, all right. So you talked about like putting on many hats. What I'm assuming is in an ideal world, like tech, product, and like the business realities, they'd likely move together.
Mhm.
But like, how do you decide like
Yes.
what not to invest in, or like when is the time to like course correct? Like, what's your like take on that?
If your question is around which area to focus on as an individual, is that your question, or is the question around what should the company focus on at? Is there something more important for the company at certain stage? Is that your question, or is it from the individual's perspective?
From an individual's perspective, like, what's your take on that?
That's true. When you're running your own company, of course, you have to don many hats. That's a given. Early days, we were just a five-member company. Me, my co-founder, three more engineers, actually two more engineers and a designer. So no sales, no finance, no marketing, etc., etc. The usual functions that you would see in a large company. Then who would go ahead and do it, right? So as a founder, of course, you have to make sure you understand the not you understand the problem statement really really well. You understand whom are you building for, and every every moment is extremely important for survival of the company. I mean, it's you're in a survival mode all the time. You don't have you have a fixed runway. You're not, let alone being profitable, you're not even generating money, right? You're just making sure that with whatever resources you have, essentially people and money, can you create value so that you survive for another 6 months and another 6 months and so on. You're prolonging your runway by creating value, and then of course it should ideally snowball into something big, right? So that demands now, given that money is limited, time is limited, you can't really spend a lot of time hiring the experts, etc. You need to learn to do a lot of things yourself. I learned how I had to spend a lot of time understanding what does a PNL even look like, what does customer segmentation mean, how to go ahead and do market research. A lot of it brute force, maybe not done right. There's no science scientific formula behind how to get it right. It's more about your common sense, and a lot of hustle is needed in the early days to just get it done. So in fact, working at Apollo, we have these values of urgency, ownership, etc. It boils down to the same set of things, but on a much more bigger, much bigger scale, or much more intensity. I would say, not scale. That you literally need to own up to everything. If your software isn't working, you go and fix the bugs. You hardly have any customers, so you have to pamper each user that comes in. You have to make sure their experience is 120%, is 6 on 5. They will complain. B2C has its own nuances, and they will leave because your software is pretty incomplete. But once you find those little sweet spots where they start appreciating what you have built, you build a small following, you build your first set of advocates, you protect them, and you're still running out of time, you still don't have enough resources. How do you secure more capital? Fundraising is an art and skill in itself. Learned a bit about that. So that's now in the end, to answer your question, then, since you are looking at so many things all at once, what's important in the end? Whatever is important for the survival of the company. Early days, that's how it is, honestly. If you have a, let's say, let's take an example. On a Wednesday, you wake up and you're running your own company. You have 5 developers and you have a certain money in the bank. You know the runway, the clock is always ticking backwards. That's always there in your mind, right? There's no infinite runway. So given that you have 3 months remaining, or given that you have 8 months remaining, and your current software is at a certain stage that, okay, it has 5 features, 3 of them don't work, 2 of them work, and you have 1500 customers or 5000 customers, what is the most important thing to do today, so that again you can prolong the runway just a little bit more, you can create a little more value, so on and so forth. And of course you need to still stay aligned with the long term vision, even though you know that you may not be around for too long, right? So maybe today the most important thing is to reach out to even more customers, or maybe today the too many bugs have piled up. Yesterday we had, let's say, a beta session with 50 users and we got tons of feedback, and we really need to fix it before we go to the next set of users. So maybe that's the priority. So the priorities do keep changing, and maybe today you feel like you are extremely stretched and you really need to hire. So maybe the next 2 3 days go just into interviewing. So it's little short bursts of focus on certain things in certain phases, and you have to keep switching context almost every day. Keep taking quick decisions. You can't wait too long. Do we build this versus build that? Just take a call, move forward, so on and so forth. So it's a lot of context switch and short phases of high intensity work focused in one area. Right? Okay, let me just close out these bugs over the next 2 days and then move on to something else. Or maybe just close out hiring over the next 3 days or 1 week in a very focused manner, get done with the problem and then move on.
Got it, got it. Yeah, like that's actually pretty great. Like yeah, I like one of them like index down on this. Like, what are some like non-negotiables that you have like held on to for like over the years? Like, what are some things that you know that okay, you will always do this, or like you will never do this, like something like that.
Okay, if the question is around in terms of principles, um, or certain guidelines that I've built for myself, that if I'm into software, these are some non-negotiables, and um, both in terms of what you should be doing and not be doing. I think I can probably set some context, and that will also help anybody who's watching this video will understand a little better. So we were building a company in the domain of live learning. Right? We felt that Udemy, Coursera, all of those have much lesser engagement. People buy courses, but they don't watch through it. It's recording in the end, right? So it's passive learning, and it's not as engaging as live could be. The way we are interacting right now, it's much more engaging. And we did have good signals from the market where everywhere across the world, everywhere across the world, live streaming was gaining in popularity, whether it's for entertainment, whether it's for commercial purposes, etc. And education seemed like a really good use case where if we could bring the offline experience or even parts of it into an online world where students are learning live with a teacher and along with fellow students and making it really, really interactive, people would spend longer time and learn better, right? That's what it was primarily about. You could browse through many live courses, register for them, and then attend 60-minute, 45-minute sessions, which were live. And the engagement was through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing is, non-negotiables, uh, in the end, whom are you building the software for? I think early days when I was part of slightly bigger startups and companies, and still learning the trade, had very little idea of front end, back end, monolith, etc., etc. So many buzzwords all around, right? You were really focused very deeply into your craft, right? Your software should be really nice and maintainable and bug free, etc. Amazing. In principle, of course, if your software is great, it ladders up to the larger goal of building an overall high quality product. But I think even as an engineer, no matter whatever you do in an organization, you really need to understand who your customer is, whether it's an internal user, it's an external customer, etc. And is your day being spent in solving the problem for the customer or not? Directly, indirectly, doesn't matter. um, that's a non-negotiable. I think that really, really helps in simplifying your life, your priorities. You don't get too distracted. And I think all the other things also start falling in place. Say your personal growth, your company success, etc., etc. If you create good value for your customers, I think that's um, it has helped me stay grounded. It has helped me realize that um, when it gets really confusing, when it gets really hard to decide what's the right thing to do, this is a simple guiding principle, right? Is it useful for the user or not, whoever my end customer is? And then you, of course, plug in more factors. How long is it going to take to build? What resources are needed, etc., etc. That's one definitely a non-negotiable sort of thing if that is what you're looking for. The other thing is always stay close to the code. If you're no matter what role are you in, as an engineer, engineering manager, doesn't matter. Stay close to code, understand how it works. Maybe not line by line, it's not always possible, but understand the mechanics behind it, understand the architecture, question it. Are there better ways of doing it? um, why there are no strict formulas for writing great software, right? There are guidelines. People do it differently. Different people have succeeded in their own ways. So it's good to be a bit skeptical about it. And you can only be a good skeptic if you understand what's working and what's not, right? So always stay close to the code, no matter what stage of your journey you are in, what role you are playing. I think these two definitely come to my mind. And call out bullshit early. I think if something is not working out, it's okay to move on. If you have built something, don't get too attached. Uh, it's okay. Sometimes we do feel that it's a great resume point. You know, it's a feature that I worked on for 3 months, 6 months. It's not giving you the right dividends, and it will get abandoned eventually. So good to do it sooner and put it on your resume as something that you tried, you attempted, you built it right. Maybe the outcome wasn't in your favor, and that's perfectly okay. Most of the resumes and LinkedIn profiles and whatnot are so polished that you end up feeling that anything and everything that this person has done in their life has always worked out, which is absolutely not the case. So 8 out of 10 times it won't yield the desired results, and it's okay. You learn from it and make sure the rest too are absolutely home runs, right? So it's okay to move on. Just don't get too attached to what you have built and what you have been doing in the past. Even as processes, I think sometimes we get too attached to rituals and processes and ways of doing things, and these cultural things or these things get embedded in the culture in a wrong way. Nobody questions them. Things keep happening the way they have been happening, and the next set of people who come in just follow it, right? They don't really question it. Maybe it's it's a it's really important to take a pause and ask that, is it really worth it? It doesn't seem right. Maybe there's a lot of grunt work involved in a certain process, then why hasn't anyone questioned it? Or if a product is not working and the numbers are clearly showing it is still a part of your entire range of offerings, then probably it's good to sunset it and move on or not invest time on it. So that's one thing that definitely comes to my mind. Don't get too attached. Or also taking quick decisions. Sorry, extending this a little more. Taking quick decisions is imperative. Whenever you are faced with a scenario where you have to take decisions, take that opportunity to take a decision. It's an it's a super critical skill to have, to be able to take decisions. Um, and as you progress further, I think more and more questions will land on your desk that, should we do A versus B? Should we do C versus D? Sometimes you have to even extract the third option when you're presented with two and then take a decision. So I think decision making, challenging the status quo, these two are also extremely important. And once you take a decision, just back it with full commitment. Ensure your team is also committed to it. Ensure you are committed to it. Basically, you leave the room after a certain decision that you have taken. Back it up, make it right, make the decision work to the best of your capability. If it doesn't work out, it's fine. You can always look back and dig up the learnings. But not deciding, analysis paralysis uh, has probably caused more damage than a wrong decision. Most of the decisions can be reversed in some manner. They're not really fatal.
Got it, got it. You talked about like your like overall like while working on the startup, you talked about like multiple picking up multiple hats. So could you like describe like what did like your average day-to-day look like back then?
Beautiful, wonderful question. I think that's easier for me to explain. So, let's say we have $1 million in the bank,
Mm-hmm.
and we are a 30-member small company based out of Bangalore, and we're trying to solve live learning. We are trying to make it more accessible, affordable, so that any person like you and me can buy a course on a specific topic. I want to learn MS Excel for, let's say, 2,000 rupees, and there's an expert teacher sitting in, let's say, Delhi, and that person conducts a class on like a Zoom like environment. 50 people join in and take a session and go back. Let's say there are 3 sessions, they're happy, they learn something, and there are like hundreds of such classes listed on the platform. This is what we are trying to solve. What are the challenges that I would face on a day-to-day basis, or how my day would look like? So, of course, starting off the day with, is everything working? Um, P zeros, F zeros. We At that stage, of course, you do not have a very sophisticated alerting mechanisms, etc. Right? You do have your very fundamental alerting and observability in place. Um, Critical health checks: is it working? Is it not working? Is the site up, down? Absolute critical metrics that I recall we would look at in the morning, or at least I would personally look at that in the last 24 hours, in the last 12 hours, has the revenue been steady? Have the number of bookings been steady? Has there been an anomaly in some of these absolutely golden metrics, North Star metrics that we need to make sure are stable as a company, right? Because if these metrics fluctuate, then what are you even doing, right? This is what we are doing. So it's almost like running a sweet shop. And what do you look at? You look at number of sweets sold or volume of sweets sold, your revenue every day, etc. Right? That's what you would look at. So let's say the attendance has been 3,000, 5,000 students every day or 10,000 students every day. Has the number dipped? If say we are having 100 classes every day, did 100 classes happen yesterday or not? Was the attendance proper or not? If the attendance has dipped, there's a technical glitch, right? Students are not able to join the classes. If the revenue is, let's say, 1 lakh per day, was the revenue 70,000 yesterday? Then why did we lose out on 30,000? Was the payments failing, or did we deliberately drop the prices yesterday, etc.? So very fundamental questions. Some of the answers might be very technical, some of the answers might not be very technical, but you need to be fully aware that where are these metrics? Are these metrics accurately measured? Can you see them in one place or not? And if there's an anomaly, you really have to quickly do an RC and figure out if this is a legit anomaly, or is it part of a trend and it's not alarming, right? That's how you start your day. Of course, your Slack is pretty loaded with a lot of micro decision that you have to take. Hey, this user is asking for an extra discount. Can we do it? Hey, the attendance was really low in this specific class. We were facing a lot of technical issues. Now the observability is not great, right? So how do I verify this claim that students were specifically facing additional issues in this painting class? I really have no idea how to verify that claim. So you attend a class. They say, okay, 12 p.m. this class is starting again. Let me attend myself and sit through and see what's going on, what's not. Then you figure out, okay, the teacher is maybe not able to figure out certain configuration or struggling with the UI. Then you talk to the engineering product team that, hey, just noticed that there are a couple of issues. Let's solve it. If it's a small one, let's ship it quickly. I mean, shipping cycles were really quick, right? With a 10-member engineering team or 15-member team, you would not wait for too long. You have your typical rituals: engineering stand-up, sales, business, marketing, combined stand-ups, etc., just to have a pulse check on how things are progressing. At that point in time, yes, coding was part of the day, not entirely. Early days, it was all about coding, right? You don't really do many things beyond coding, product building, etc. But during daytime, probably spend a little bit of time on brainstorming with engineers, a little bit more coding. If you're looking at backend, then okay, contribute to a little bit of backend. If you're looking at front end, fix a few front end things, etc., etc. Then by the evening, again, the classes would begin, right? We usually had the calendar structured in a way where later part of the day had more classes, right? Students would come back from school, people would come back from work and then take those extra classes, etc. Then you really have to be the on-call person, attend a few classes, look at what the issues are, make sure the experience is steady, smooth, etc., etc. And then by the evening, of course, more of ad hoc things. Again, what complaints came in during the day, and then some brainstorming sessions on what next to build. How do the next 2 weeks look like? How do the next 4 weeks look like? Any interesting, let's say if the data analysts have pointed out that there's an interesting trend in this category, maybe arts and painting is picking up and we should build something for them so that it's a bigger value add. Then we brainstorm on certain ideas that, okay, why not introduce reactions and emojis on the screen for these more creative classes, so that students are more engaged. So more future looking things, right? Mini road mapping, mini sprint planning, or whatever you call it, right? And then you just wrap your day up. Post dinner, probably. Those were longer days. So that's how a typical day went about.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to talk about like over the years, like you've even after multiple hats, like what are like some areas that you have consciously made your strength? And maybe like we could start with like maybe technical areas that you'd wanna like think of like some
Mhm.
area that you've made consciously your strength, like unconsciously.
Honestly, none of it has been a strength per se. I started off as a backend person.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, why did I start off as a backend person? I don't really recall a good reason why. because I remember in starting off the internship at housing.com, we were 5 people, and probably one front end engineer. Or at that time, you wouldn't even categorize yourself as a front end or back end engineer. You were just an intern, right? And they just put us in the team which was doing back end work. So you started off with back end. You neither knew back end, you neither knew front end. So you better start off with anything.
Yeah, yeah,
So
true.
that's how it started. But then worked on backend with housing as an intern. Mintra also, it was backend. Nestaway was backend, but by that time I was keen that I should understand everything. In the end, whether it's backend, front end, mobile app, doesn't matter. But the litmus test of my knowledge that I put on myself was, if I had to build something of this sort on my own, then I should have the knowledge of whether it's backend, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's front end, etc. At least I should know the fundamentals. Maybe I'll be slightly more proficient in one of these areas. Maybe I'll be a better mobile app developer than a front end developer, but at least I should be well aware of how all these systems function. Right. So at Trebo, I made a conscious effort to learn front end, and that I clearly remember. Requested my manager that, hey, we are building this internal mobile portal, MWeb portal for the sales folks. So what they would do is they would go and strike. Trebo was into hospitality. What the sales folks would do is, when they struck a deal or when they had to create a booking for a B2B client, they would pass on that information through emails, right? Open-ended, free-flowing, likha hua email. Ki, hey, this is a huge B2B client. They want a 150 room booking for this date, etc. And then inside sales team would read it, understand what they have written, and prone to errors, right? What if I accidentally write 24 March instead of 24th Feb? So to write an email and translate it into a booking into the system and send back the invoice, etc. So you imagine the process, very human-led. We said that we'll give them the portal directly so that they can punch the booking directly and see it for themselves. It's faster, less error prone. We already had the backend in place. Most of the APIs were there in place, and we had to build a front end. React was the cool thing, and I really put my hand up saying that, hey, I want to build it. It's okay if it takes a little bit of an extra effort. I'll learn. And I was really, really fortunate that the senior engineer on front end was an extremely good teacher. Um, really good skills to explain how to work with React, how does front end work, state management, and whatnot. So worked with him and then learned UI. So got a bit of UI skills there. Then when moved to Germany, the role that the company had, surprisingly, was all full stack engineers. It was a tiny company, just 5 engineers, and they only had full stack engineering role. I said, yeah, perfect, that works brilliantly. And there, I worked as a full stack engineer. So some days it was back end, or some weeks it was back end at a stretch, and then maybe a few weeks of front end, and then back end, and so on and so forth. When we started off with BitClass in 2020, then it was a no choice. You had to do front end, you had to do back end, you had to do everything. Infra, understanding how Nginx works, how understanding what are the features on AWS. Everything was new, and everything was something that you had to learn and do. And even analytics, for that matter. Writing queries, retention, adoption. If you had to pull out numbers, you really can't wait for your data team all the time to give you those numbers. You better be capable of doing it on your own, or even Excel for that matter. Learn how to do these little things in Excel, because they would also be occupied with tons of things. Everybody's desk is overflowing. So all aspects had to be touched upon eventually. But if you really put a gun to my head and ask which one would you be more proficient in, maybe a little bit more on backend, but and little less on front end as of now. That's a reality, but never really stuck to one thing. That this is one area where I really should have extra weightage in terms of proficiency, or even data for that matter.
Okay, got it, got it. Yeah, I wanna talk about so you mentioned backend, right? So from what I understood and
Yeah.
got to know that you worked on a little bit on search, relevance, recommendations across
Oh yeah.
across a different industry. So I'm curious what actually goes on making systems like that. So if you wanna give a walkthrough
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Early days and very brief phase where I did get an opportunity to work on search and recommendation for housing, Mintra, and even Nestaway. I wasn't the DRI. I mean, disclaimer there. I was working with really, really smart people who had either built the system and I was contributing to it, or were revamping the system and I was a co-contributor. Now, in the end, when we are in college, we look up to these massive companies. Search meant Google, right? Everybody felt that, okay, and it is still an extremely powerful search engine which helps you retrieve information. Simple. It's fast, it's accurate, and the data is very, very relevant, right? It has a huge repository of data as well that it maintains. So, when, let's say in housing or in Nestaway, if you, or even Mintra for that matter, right? What does search even mean? So working on those systems, or even understanding what is the problem statement that search is trying to solve, that was the eureka moment, so to say, in its small ways, but it really added a lot of color to the perspective of what does search even mean. Is it free text? Is it more contextual? How do you capture the context? How do you capture the the whole business context or the business rules of the business domain and plug it into search? For example, even though it might sound like finding a house in a city is really hard, right? You look at n number of parameters to find that house. So how do you make sure that the same experience is something that can be brought in online on a portal like housing.com, 99 acres, etc., etc. You see tons of filters, you see free text search, you see recommended listings, etc. So all of these components go into making sure that the information is presented to you accurately and fast. As simple as that. And one very important learning was that yes, speed matters, quality of the data matters, quality of listings matter. You have to stay very contextual to the domain for which you're building the search. For example, house. Um, Rental house searches, your images have to be really high quality, right? It has to really, when I say quality, it does not just mean that it's 50 megapixel uh, camera taking a pic, etc., but also what angles are you shooting in? Is it clearly describing what a user wants to see in a house, right? So that quality of data, location, pricing, more or less these fundamental factors influence your search. So it's not a very sophisticated algorithm behind it per se. Plus the availability of search-oriented databases in the market like Elasticsearch had made it really simple to build these systems pretty quickly. And today, if you had a catalog of data, building a search on top of it, the technical part is slightly simpler compared to understanding what the algorithm should factor in. For example, searching on Mintra, you may not always look for black shoes on Mintra all the time. Sometimes you just feel like browsing, right? Ki aur dikhao, show me more. Uh, so it's more recommendation oriented information retrieval, right? That okay, the user has some idea of what they need and they need to be inspired, versus maybe shopping on Instamart or Blinkit, where you know exactly what you need. You are not always there to browse. I mean, the tendency to explore is slightly lower, maybe. So that's one part of it. What does the user need? Then the other part of it, what do you want the user to do? Do you really want them to just find their thing and leave? Which is what sometimes we have heard Google saying, right? That we want them to search really less time on our search page and then move away. But is that in the business's favor? Let's say for a company like Blinkit, maybe it's important that they help you find what you need, but they also want some more spice so that you keep exploring, you keep adding two more items in the cart. How does your search facilitate that, right? And then it's maybe searching for a cab on Uber. There is exploration really important? I don't think so. You just want your cab. You have a very specific search criteria. You need an SUV. You want to go from place A to place B. How do you find the right cab, right? That's also a search kind of a thing. And then working at Apollo, searching for prospects is a different ball game altogether. So I think the most important learning beyond the technical part, of course, I learned some of these technical nuances as well. How to build, what are the tools available in the market? What are the technologies available in the market that help build you a reasonably good search experience? But the most important part was, how do you make the search useful? The information that you're retrieving, are you understanding what the user is looking for? What is their behavior on your platform? Right? Even for live learning that we were building, if we had a catalog of, let's say, 100 courses across, let's say, 10 categories, it's not always uh, possible that a user comes in with an exact criteria. You might come in saying that, hey, I want to learn Python. What if I don't have Python? What if I have data science using Python? I would still want you to want to retain you, right? And suggest something. If I don't have X, I show Y. So those nearby neighbors that I want to show you. So again, boils down to the same thing. Very long answer, I know, but understanding the business context for each of them. Why is search algorithm being tuned or factoring in these specific parameters? Um, was the most interesting part. And of course, there were non-negotiable parameters. It has to be fast. It has to return a certain number of responses, etc. Those were, of course, non-functional requirements that we always respected. Filtering, sorting, paginations, etc. Very sidecar things that you always had to build.
Got it, got it. That was like great learning. I now want to move forward to like your like later journey. So like what motivated to you to be like an engineering manager, and like how did like transition like really look like in practice? Yeah, if you want to talk on that.
What motivated? Maybe what I had been doing before becoming an engineering manager kind of fit me into that box more than anything else. As an engineering manager or an engineering leader in any organization, you're able to probably influence more outcomes at once. Yes, you do get a little away from the ground reality. I mean, the coding aspect of it, so to say. You need to operate at a slightly higher level, trust the people with whom you're working, empower them so that they do a good job. If you have 10 engineers, 15 engineers, you really have to make sure you create the right conditions for them to win. So it's a huge mindset shift. But the cycles of success are also longer, right? With when you're programming, particularly in a smaller setup, you see success very quickly. You get that little dopamine hit almost every day. You ship something, you get happy. Some user clicks on it, you get data. So the cycle of seeing that success from 0 to 1 is very quick. As an engineering manager, then those cycles become longer because you're handling a team. Your team success would be more quarterly, on a 6 monthly basis, or at the end of sprint, you see some wins and so on. So you have to be a little more patient, but then you can influence bigger outcomes. You can, if you set up the right structure, you empower the right people, or empower people and put the right people in the right places, you can really make you can influence huge outcomes. You can create a massive impact, and I think that's pretty inspiring. That's pretty motivating. That you even as an individual, if you are able to build a great team and pick the right problem statements and address them well, the outcomes can be massive and massively multiplied. So I think that was the biggest motivation per se to move in this direction. Not that you can't do if you're a technical leader, but this is one way of doing it.
Got it. And like, what were like the differences that you like saw from like in your let's say day to day workflow, like your mindset when you like became an EM as opposed to an IC? Like, how did like feel like?
Oh, lots. It's a different ball game altogether. Although in the end, like I said, you're solving for the customer. Even as an EM, your north star is the same. But here, your success is more dependent, or it is more guided by the team, right? Um, like I said, if you, let's say, have a team of 10 people, are you able to figure out the right problem statements? Are you able to put the right people at the right place? Different people, different seniority, different skill sets, different preferences. How do you, it's almost like a matchmaking thing, right? 5 people on this side, 5 problem statements here. Who's best positioned to deliver on which problem statement? There are scenarios when, and what happens if no one is suited to deliver a problem statement, or if there are multiple people seeking the same problem statement? What do you do then? Right? So it's an interesting matchmaking problem in terms of people and the projects. Setting up the right structure so that information is not lost, information is accurate, communicated timely, the team is focused on the right things once after having started. It's not something that you just kickstart and expect that it will follow through perfectly to the end. There will be disruptions in between. How do you make sure that you are there to solve those unexpected disruptions? And more importantly, can you then predict them? That yeah, 2 weeks down the line, I do see this kind of a problem will happen. So are you able to preempt those things from happening? How far down the line do you have that visibility? 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, while your team is more focused on day-to-day execution, right? They may not have your team has their blinders on because they're extremely focused, and you need to make sure their focus time is protected. So that, as an IC, your role is very different, right? You're building software, you're shipping software, you're making sure that your quality is really, really high. Because even as an IC, my manager would place that trust on me, correct? That whatever I've built, is it functioning properly? Am I aware of all the bugs in the system? What needs to be solved? Am I aware of where the latency challenges might be coming in from, etc., etc. So he's relying on me for that, and I'm relying on him for making sure that he presents the right set of problem statements to us. My good work is appreciated, or I'm able to figure out the next steps in my career. He gives me the right advice, etc., etc. So it's a very complementary relationship between the manager and the IC, honestly. And but again, how far down the line are you supposed to see? For a manager, you really need to make sure you are seeing it, you're able to see further down the line, 3 months, 6 months, etc., as much further as you can. You are operating at a slightly more higher level of abstraction. You're partnering with other functions more closely, and as an IC, you might not be. Whether it's sales, marketing, support, product design, etc., etc. So you are representing the engineering function in those forums, building bridges and relationships so that you can work together, understanding the working style of different teams. How does sales work? How does support work? What exactly are they looking for? Translating that business need for the team to understand. Right? If this is what the business is looking for, as an IC, my understanding of the business wasn't the greatest. Right? It's slowly built over time, and I'm still learning that trait of how to translate. Works both ways. What does the company want? How do you translate that problem statement for engineering and product to solve? And whatever the engineering team is doing, how do you translate it into business impact? It works both. So look, you're the broker in between. That's also part of the job. These are things I can clearly recall as the major differences, honestly. But then, of course, you need to stay technical. You need to stay close to data, close to reality, and make sure whatever you're building is useful for the customer. That's common for both IC or engineering manager. It doesn't matter. In the end, that's the most important thing that matters.
Got it, got it. You mentioned that you want to like stay close to code. So like looking forward, like let's say 10 years from here, what do you like maybe want to make a effort on like learning anything that you want to like consciously do? Any thoughts on that?
Wow, 10 years is an extremely long time frame given how quickly things are changing or things have evolved in the last 1 year. I mean, 1.5 years ago, I don't think I was prompting GPT to write code for me. But just a couple of days back, I was just trying out anti-gravity, and I just told in plain English, broken grammar, wrong spellings, that build a tic-tac-toe game for me with these features, and it magically created it in minutes. Um, so the way we generate software has drastically changed, right, in a very, very short time frame. What I would want to focus on, of course, this AI wave is unmissable, and it will not just impact how you create software, but the entire software development life cycle, right? So even though the throughput of engineers has gone up and is supposed to go up, it is supposed to uh, improve further for sure. The quality bar would be higher, etc., etc. So keeping pace with that is extremely important. Um, but overall, has the has it? I would say have teams been overall more productive or not is still yet to be solved. Have all the functions which contribute to building this software, have they adopted AI equally so that they all move in sync? What if I generate millions of lines of code every day, but my GTM team is still not able to take it to the customer at the same pace? Then it's a bottleneck. Or what if my design team is really empowered and they generate tons of designs, but the engineers are not able to translate it into code because the tooling is not set up the right way, etc., etc. So all the functions have to move in harmony. So I'm really interested in understanding and learning how AI can empower the entire company, or at least the entire product engineering functions and all the related functions, so that they can create high quality products, digital products, faster together, and eliminate those bottlenecks. So it's not just empowering one function, but overall as an organization, how AI can help us become more productive. I think that is something in general I would be really keen on understanding and keeping myself up to date with, more than specific technologies, but this specific problem statement per se. How is it getting solved?
Got it, got it, great. Yeah, yeah, I think like we can conclude, but thank you so much, Utsav, for like truly, truly amazing insights, and thank you so much for like doing this entire thing with me for the very first time.